Isaiah Brooks learned to measure mornings by small sounds. The cough of the old refrigerator before it gave up cold air. The soft scrape of Caleb's chair against the kitchen floor. The city bus sighing at the corner 2 minutes before it was supposed to. In the blue-gray light before sunrise, he stood at the counter of their narrow apartment, spreading peanut butter across 2 slices of bread with the careful patience of a man who knew waste had a price. His work shirt hung over the back of a chair, clean but fading at the collar. Beside it sat Caleb's metal lunchbox, dented on one side, the handle wrapped in black tape because Isaiah had fixed it twice and refused to replace what still had use. Caleb sat at the table in his school sweater, swinging one foot, watching his father fold the sandwich into wax paper. "You packed one for you too?" the boy asked. Isaiah didn't look up. "I packed enough." Caleb narrowed his eyes the way children did when they knew adults were hiding hunger behind grammar. He reached into his pocket and slid a folded note into the lunchbox before Isaiah could stop him. "For later," he said. Isaiah paused. Just 1 second. Then he closed the lid gently, like the small box carried something breakable. "You keep looking after me, I might get spoiled," he said. Caleb smiled, but the smile faded when his father checked the final notice tucked beneath the sugar jar. Court filing fee. Past due rent. A letter from the school about Caleb's therapy assessment. None of it made noise. That was the cruelty of paper. It could threaten a whole life in silence. Isaiah folded the notice once and put it in his back pocket. He did not sigh. He did not curse. He rinsed the knife, wiped the counter, and tied Caleb's shoelace when it came undone near the door. Downstairs, Mrs. Alvarez from 2B was fighting with a grocery bag that had split open in the hallway. Oranges rolled across the cracked tile. Isaiah set his lunchbox on the step, gathered every orange, and carried the bag to her door. "You'll miss your bus," she said. "There'll be another bus," he answered. "Only one of you." By the time he reached Whitmore House, his boots were damp from the morning rain and his name had already been reduced to a clipboard entry. Temporary driver. Background pending. Use service entrance. The mansion rose behind iron gates on a quiet street that seemed designed to keep ordinary weather away. White stone. Black windows. Cameras tucked under the eaves like watchful insects. Grant Ellison met him in the side foyer, gray suit, thin smile, eyes that weighed people and found most of them inconvenient. "Mr. Brooks," he said, glancing at Isaiah's worn jacket, the metal lunchbox in his hand, the bus transfer still tucked between his fingers. "You understand discretion is not optional here." Isaiah nodded once. "Neither is respect." Grant's smile cooled. Before he could answer, shouting broke from the circular drive. A housekeeper stood near the rear of a black town car, pale and shaking, while a little terrier darted toward the open gate, its leash dragging across wet stone. A delivery truck was backing in. Tires hissed. No one moved fast enough. Isaiah did. He set the lunchbox down, crossed the drive in 3 long strides, and caught the leash just before the dog reached the truck's blind side. The driver slammed the brake. The housekeeper covered her mouth. The dog trembled against Isaiah's boot, alive and offended. That was when Charlotte Whitmore appeared at the top of the stone steps. She wore a cream coat over a dark dress, her blonde hair pinned back too tightly, her phone pressed to her ear like an order she had not yet given. She looked expensive in the way old rooms looked expensive, quiet, polished, impossible to touch without permission. Her eyes moved from the dog to Isaiah's hand, then to the lunchbox on the wet ground. Something in her face closed. "Who let him near the front entrance?" she asked, not loudly. That made it worse. Grant stepped beside her. "The temporary driver. He appears to have misunderstood his place." Isaiah released the leash into the housekeeper's hands. He wiped rain from his palm on his pants, not to appear clean, only because Caleb had once told him dogs hated nervous hands. The housekeeper whispered thank you. Isaiah answered with a small nod. Charlotte watched the exchange as if kindness were a tactic she had not approved. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it this time. "Mr. Brooks," she said, descending 2 steps. "I needed a man who could follow instructions, not create scenes in my driveway." The staff went still. Even the driver looked away. Isaiah picked up the lunchbox. A thin line of rain slid down its dented side. He met Charlotte's eyes without challenge and without apology. "The scene was already happening, ma'am. I just didn't let it get worse." For the first time, Charlotte had no immediate reply. Only Grant moved, leaning close enough for her to hear but not him. "This is exactly why we discussed someone disposable." Isaiah heard enough. Men like Grant always assumed quiet meant empty. Then Charlotte's gaze dropped to the lunchbox again. The latch had popped open when it hit the stone. Inside, beside the wrapped sandwich, Caleb's folded note had loosened. A corner showed 3 childish words in blue pencil: "Dad, don't forget." Charlotte saw them. Something flickered in her expression, too quick to name. Not softness. Not trust. Maybe irritation at being made curious. Grant handed her a sealed folder embossed with the Whitmore crest. "The inheritance board meets in 40 minutes, he said. "You either choose today, or they choose for you." Charlotte's jaw tightened. The rain tapped against the stone steps. Isaiah stood below her, holding a dented lunchbox and a borrowed job, unaware that his entire life had just stepped into the path of hers. Charlotte opened the folder, looked once at the document inside, then at him. "Come inside, Mr. Brooks," she said. "I have a different position to discuss." The inside of Whitmore House did not feel like a home. It felt like a place where silence had been trained to behave. Marble floors. Tall windows. Fresh flowers no one seemed to smell. Isaiah followed Charlotte and Grant through the side corridor, his damp boots leaving faint marks that a maid behind him quickly erased with a cloth. He noticed that. He noticed everything. Men who had raised children alone learned to read rooms before rooms decided what to do with them. Grant opened a private study and gestured as if letting Isaiah into a place he could be removed from at any second. "Set your things there," he said, looking at the metal lunchbox like it might stain the table. Isaiah kept it in his hand. "It stays with me." Grant's eyes sharpened. Charlotte paused near the window, phone in one hand, inheritance folder in the other. She had changed nothing in her posture, but the air around her had tightened. Outside, the housekeeper was still comforting the little dog. Inside, Isaiah was being measured for a life he had not agreed to enter. "Before we discuss anything," Grant said, "we need to address the driveway incident. Security flagged your movement toward the front entrance. There are rules here, Mr. Brooks. Especially for temporary staff." Isaiah looked at him. "Not hard. Not soft. Just steady. The dog was going under a truck. That is not your department. Neither is watching something get hurt." The words landed quietly, but even quiet words could bruise a polished room. Charlotte's eyes moved to him again. She did not smile. She did not soften. But she did not look away as quickly this time. Grant placed a tablet on the desk and turned it toward her. The camera footage began without sound. Isaiah crossing wet stone. The dog darting. The truck reversing. His hand catching the leash. Then the image froze at the worst possible frame, Isaiah lunging toward the front drive, the housekeeper recoiling behind him, the gate open. Without sound, kindness looked like intrusion. Without context, urgency looked like threat. "You see the problem," Grant said. Charlotte studied the frozen image. Isaiah did too. He saw himself the way rich cameras saw poor men. Too large. Too sudden. Too close to something expensive. His jaw moved once, but he said nothing. The phone in his pocket buzzed. Caleb. He did not answer. Grant noticed. Personal calls are not permitted during executive review. Isaiah took the phone out, saw the school number, and turned the screen down against his palm. It's my son's school. Then this is a bad time to have a son. The room went still. A small change passed through Charlotte's face, almost invisible. Not sympathy. More like discomfort at the sound of something said too plainly. Isaiah slipped the phone back into his pocket. His voice stayed low. There's never a bad time to be his father. That was all. No anger. No performance. Just a line drawn clean across the marble between what he needed and what he would not let them touch. Grant gave a thin laugh and opened the folder. This is precisely the complication I warned you about, Charlotte. He has attachments. Debts. A custody pressure point. A sick child with school assessments. He's vulnerable, which means he is usable by anyone with a better offer. Isaiah's fingers tightened once around the lunchbox handle. The black tape creaked. He could have told them Caleb was not a pressure point. He could have explained the court papers, the therapy forms, the rent notice folded in his pocket like a blade. He could have said he was not for sale. But men like Grant did not ask questions to learn. They asked questions to make a man bleed in public. So Isaiah stood there, rain drying on his jacket, and chose not to bleed for them. If you've ever been judged by a single frozen moment instead of the whole truth, remember Isaiah's silence here, and subscribe to follow what happens when dignity is put on trial. Charlotte lowered her gaze to the desk, where a drop of rain from Isaiah's sleeve had fallen beside the Whitmore crest. Then she noticed the lunchbox again. The latch had loosened. The folded note from Caleb rested near the edge, still not fully open. She reached for it before she seemed to realize what she was doing. Isaiah moved first. Not sharply. Just enough. He closed the lunchbox with 2 fingers. My son's words are not part of your review. Charlotte's hand stopped in the air. For the first time since he entered, she looked less certain of the shape she had given him in her mind. Grant broke the silence. The board is waiting. If you insist on using him, we need signatures before noon. We can manage the optics later. Charlotte looked from Grant to Isaiah, then back to the frozen security image. A man caught in the ugliest frame of his best act. Her phone buzzed again. The board. The inheritance deadline. The cage her father had left dressed as a legacy. She picked up the tablet and rewound the footage, once, then again. On the third pass, she saw something Grant had not mentioned. Before Isaiah ran, he had gently moved the housekeeper behind him, shielding her from the reversing truck without ever looking for credit. Charlotte's thumb hovered over the screen. Then a message flashed across the tablet from Grant's assistant, background file updated, custody hearing moved up. Charlotte's eyes narrowed. Isaiah had not seen it yet. But Grant had. And he was already smiling. The bus ride back to the south side took 47 minutes and felt longer because Isaiah never sat down. He stood near the rear door with one hand wrapped around the pole, the metal lunchbox tucked under his arm, his phone pressed between shoulder and ear while the city blurred past in wet gray streaks. Yes, ma'am, he said softly. I understand the hearing moved. No, I'm not ignoring the paperwork. I just need 2 more days. The legal clerk on the other end spoke in the flat voice of someone who had learned not to carry other people's emergencies home. Isaiah listened. His face did not change. When the call ended, he slid the phone into his pocket and looked at his reflection in the bus window. A tired black man in a damp jacket. Work boots scuffed white at the toes. A lunchbox repaired with tape. A man easy to underestimate if all you knew about him was the frame someone paused on a screen. At Caleb's school, the hallway smelled of floor wax, crayons, and overcooked cafeteria food. Caleb came out with his backpack hanging from one shoulder and one sneaker untied, holding a science worksheet covered in careful pencil marks. He searched his father's face the way children search skies for weather. "Did the rich lady fire you?" Isaiah crouched and tied the shoe. "Slow loop. Tight knot." "Not today." Caleb watched him. "That means maybe tomorrow." Isaiah looked up then, close enough for Caleb to see the calm he was choosing. "That means we handle today first." Caleb nodded, but he was 7, and 7-year-olds heard the words adults tried not to say. At home, their apartment welcomed them with the hum of the old refrigerator and the faint smell of coffee grounds Isaiah had saved from the morning. The living room was small enough that the couch touched the wall and the kitchen table touched the radiator. But everything had a place. Caleb's school drawing was taped beside the light switch, 2 stick figures under a yellow sun, one tall, one small, both smiling wider than life usually allowed. Isaiah hung his jacket on the chair, washed his hands, then opened the lunchbox. The sandwich was still there. So was Caleb's folded note. He unfolded it only after Caleb went to sharpen a pencil. "Dad, don't forget to eat too. You get quiet when you're hungry." Isaiah read it once. Then once more. He smiled in a way that barely reached his mouth but softened the room anyway. He ate half the sandwich standing over the sink, not because he was ashamed to sit, but because the table was covered with bills, custody forms, a school assessment packet, and the rent notice he had tried to keep hidden under a grocery flyer. Caleb returned and saw it all. The boy said nothing. He climbed into the chair and opened his math homework like silence could help his father breathe. Isaiah noticed. He always noticed. "You do the first 5, he said. "I'll do the dishes. Then we'll fight the fractions together." "Fractions don't fight fair." "Most things don't." Caleb looked up. Isaiah dried a chipped plate and added, "So we learn balance." Outside, tires hissed on wet pavement. Somewhere upstairs, a baby cried. Somewhere downstairs, a television laughed too loudly. Isaiah moved through the small kitchen with quiet economy, fixing a loose cabinet hinge with a butter knife, rinsing Caleb's medicine cup, folding the legal notice into a neat square and placing it beneath a magnet shaped like a rocket ship. He did not allow disorder to become despair. Later, when Caleb fell asleep on the couch with his workbook open across his chest, Isaiah sat beside him under the weak yellow lamp. He checked the voicemail from the driving agency. His temporary assignment at Whitmore House was suspended pending client review. No pay until cleared. He played it only once. Then he deleted it. Caleb stirred. "Dad? I'm here. If we have to move again, can my lunchbox come?" Isaiah looked at the metal box on the counter, its dented side catching the lamplight. "That lunchbox has survived more than some furniture," he whispered. "It comes wherever we go." Caleb settled. His breathing evened out. Isaiah covered him with the old blue blanket and sat for a long moment, elbows on knees, hands clasped, letting the weight of the day press down without bowing his head to it. Across the city, in a room full of glass and quiet money, Charlotte Whitmore watched the driveway footage again with the sound finally restored. The brakes. The housekeeper's gasp. Isaiah's voice, low and steady, saying, "Ma'am, step back." Then the dog yelping as the truck stopped inches away. Charlotte paused the video on the frame Grant had shown her earlier. Then she rewound 5 seconds and saw what had been missing. Isaiah had not lunged toward the housekeeper. He had shielded her. On Charlotte's desk, Grant's updated background file sat open. Custody hearing moved up. Assignment suspended. Financial stress high. Recommended leverage, child-related urgency. Charlotte stared at that line longer than she meant to. Then her phone buzzed with a message from Grant. "We should withdraw the offer before he becomes complicated." Charlotte looked once more at Isaiah on the screen, a man holding a leash in one hand and his dignity in the other. At 10:18 p.m. Isaiah's phone lit up on the kitchen table beside Caleb's lunchbox. Unknown number. One message. Be at Whitmore House tomorrow at 8. Bring your son's legal documents. Isaiah arrived at Whitmore House at 7:53 with Caleb beside him, not because he wanted his son near that place, but because the message had said to bring the documents and school drop-off did not begin until 8:30. Caleb wore his backpack with the rocket patch and carried the metal lunchbox in both hands, as if the little box had been promoted to something official. The gates opened before Isaiah pressed the intercom. That told him they had been watching. A security guard met them near the side entrance and looked at Caleb first, then at Isaiah's boots, then at the folder tucked under Isaiah's arm. Children don't usually come through here, the guard said. Isaiah kept his voice even. Neither do fathers who get called before breakfast. The guard blinked, unsure whether that was disrespect or simply truth. Inside, the same hallway waited with its polished silence. Only this time, Charlotte Whitmore stood at the far end beneath a long blade of morning light, dressed in a charcoal suit, hair pinned back, face composed enough to hide a storm from anyone who had not been inside one. Grant Ellison stood beside her with a tablet pressed to his ribs, already irritated by the sight of Caleb. This was not an invitation for a family visit, he said. Isaiah rested a hand lightly on Caleb's shoulder. It was an invitation with no notice. Caleb looked up at Charlotte. Not afraid exactly. More like he was trying to solve a difficult word problem. Charlotte's eyes moved to the lunchbox. The black tape around the handle. The dented corner. The small fingers holding it carefully. Something almost shifted in her face, then closed again. Mr. Brooks, she said. I asked you here because there are inconsistencies in yesterday's report. Grant's jaw tightened. Inconsistencies can be handled by legal. Not this one, Charlotte said, still watching Isaiah. She led them not to the study, but to the security room, a narrow space lined with monitors and the faint electronic hum of recorded judgment. 2 security staff stood at attention. A senior house manager named Mrs. Vale waited near the wall, hands folded, eyes avoiding Isaiah as if shame had a temperature. Charlotte played the driveway footage again. Sound on. Full angle. No pause. Caleb stood very still when the truck hissed backward on the screen. Isaiah did not look at the video. He watched his son instead. When the image showed Isaiah moving Mrs. Vale behind him before catching the dog's leash, the room went quiet in a different way. Not kind. Just less certain. Charlotte stopped the footage. Why didn't you say that yesterday? Isaiah looked at the frozen screen, then at Mrs. Vale, whose mouth trembled with words she could not afford to speak. Because she was scared, he said. And scared people don't need someone pointing at them. Mrs. Vale's eyes filled, but she lowered her head before anyone saw too much. Grant set the tablet down harder than necessary. Noble answer. Convenient too. Isaiah did not turn toward him. Truth doesn't get better because I raise my voice. Caleb looked at his father then, and something in the boy's small shoulders loosened. Charlotte noticed. She noticed the way Isaiah did not perform for the room. The way he did not ask for his suspension to be reversed. The way he did not use Mrs. Vale's fear as a ladder. That bothered her more than it should have. She was used to people explaining themselves until they revealed their price. Isaiah explained only what protected someone else. I still need your documents, Charlotte said, more quietly. Isaiah handed over the folder. Grant reached for it first, but Charlotte took it before him. Inside were court notices, school assessment forms, a payment plan from a clinic, and a copy of Caleb's birth certificate worn soft at the fold. No embellishment. No plea. Just the architecture of a father trying to keep a child safe. Grant scanned the first page and clicked his tongue. This confirms my concern. His custody hearing has been moved forward. Financial instability will be raised. If he loses work now, he becomes desperate. Desperate men create liability. Caleb understood enough to stiffen. Isaiah felt it under his hand. He looked down at his son and gave one small squeeze. Not comfort as disguise. Comfort as promise. Go sit by the window, buddy, he said. Count the black cars for me. All of them. Start with the ones that look too shiny to trust. Caleb almost smiled. He walked to the window, lunchbox against his chest. Charlotte watched him go. The room seemed colder without the child between them. She turned back to Isaiah. I have a task for you. Grant's eyes snapped toward her. Charlotte. She ignored him. A bored car leaves in 20 minutes. My regular driver called out. You'll take me to the inheritance meeting. Isaiah held her gaze. Is this a job or a test? Charlotte's answer came too fast. Both. A weaker man might have dressed his pride as anger. Isaiah only nodded once. Then I'll do the job. You can keep the test. For a second, even the monitors seemed to hold their breath. Charlotte's expression stayed controlled, but something behind her eyes recalculated him. Outside the security room, Caleb had set the lunchbox on the windowsill while counting cars. Its latch, weakened from yesterday's fall, had slipped open again. Mrs. Vale noticed first. Then Charlotte did. Inside, beneath the folded note and half a sandwich, lay a small court receipt stamped with tomorrow's date and one handwritten line in Caleb's careful blue pencil. Dad said we don't beg. We show up clean. The bored car smelled like leather, rain, and money that had never been late. Isaiah drove with both hands steady on the wheel, shoulders relaxed, eyes moving from mirror to road to curb with the quiet precision of a man who knew accidents rarely announced themselves. Charlotte sat behind him, separated by tinted glass and habit, one hand resting on a folder Grant had insisted she bring. Grant sat beside her, scrolling through messages, his reflection pale and sharp in the window. Take Lexington, he said without looking up. Isaiah glanced at the traffic ahead. Brake lights burned red for 6 blocks. Lexington is blocked. Grant's thumb stopped. I gave an instruction. And I'm responsible for the car. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. Charlotte lifted her eyes from the folder. Grant's mouth tightened, but before he could answer, the car slowed beside a bus stop where an elderly man had dropped a paper pharmacy bag into the gutter. Orange bottles rolled under the curb, small and bright against the wet asphalt. People stepped around him. A cyclist cursed. A woman in heels looked away because looking meant choosing. Isaiah checked the mirror, eased the car to the curb, and put it in park. Grant snapped his head up. What are you doing? Isaiah opened the door. Keeping someone's medicine out of the street. We are late for an inheritance board meeting. Isaiah paused with one hand on the door frame. Then they can inherit patience for 2 minutes. Grant stared as if insulted by the existence of the sentence. Charlotte said nothing. Outside, rain misted the windshield. Isaiah stepped into traffic with one palm raised, not commanding, just asking for space. A taxi horn barked. Someone shouted from behind. He crouched near the gutter, gathering the bottles one by one, wiping grime from the labels with the edge of his sleeve. The old man kept apologizing, hands shaking too badly to hold the bag open. Isaiah did not rush him. That was what Charlotte noticed first. Not the help. Plenty of people helped when watched. She noticed his lack of performance. He moved like the old man's embarrassment mattered more than the schedule of billionaires. When one bottle rolled beneath the town car, Isaiah lowered himself onto one knee, reaching under the chassis. The cuff of his trousers soaked through. Grant let out a cold laugh. This is why people like him stay where they are. No sense of scale. Charlotte looked at Grant then. Not sharply. Not yet. But long enough. Isaiah stood, placed the last bottle into the bag, and folded the top closed so the rain would not get in. The old man tried to press a $5 bill into his hand. Isaiah stepped back. "Keep that, sir. Please," the man said. "You stopped." Isaiah's gaze softened. "Somebody should." A bus hissed behind them. The board clock kept moving. Isaiah returned to the car with rain on his shoulders and one dark streak of street water across his sleeve. He did not explain. He did not apologize. He simply checked the mirrors and pulled back into traffic. Charlotte's phone buzzed 3 times. "Board counsel." Grant answered for her without asking. "We're delayed because the driver decided to play neighborhood hero." Isaiah's eyes stayed on the road. A muscle moved once in his jaw, then settled. Charlotte watched the back of his head. Watched the water drip from his cuff onto the expensive floor mat. Watched him guide the car around a stalled delivery van before Grant had time to complain. "How much will that delay cost us?" Grant asked, voice low enough to sound private and loud enough to be a blade. Isaiah stopped at a light. On the passenger seat beside him, Caleb's lunchbox rested where the security guard had placed it after Caleb left for school with Mrs. Vale's help. The latch was closed now, but the black tape on the handle had come loose at one edge. Isaiah pressed it down with his thumb while waiting for green. A small gesture. Habit. Care. Charlotte saw it in the mirror. She saw the same hand that had gathered medicine, the same hand that had closed a child's lunchbox before anyone could read what was inside. "Mr. Brooks," she said. Her voice cut through the low hum of the engine. "Are you always this comfortable ignoring orders?" Isaiah looked at her through the rearview mirror. There was no challenge in his eyes. Only a boundary. "No, ma'am. I'm just careful about which ones make me less of a man." The light changed. He drove. No one spoke for the next 6 blocks. At Whitmore Holdings, cameras flashed the moment the car arrived. Grant stepped out first, already shaping the story with his face. Charlotte remained seated half a second longer than usual. Her gaze had dropped to the floor mat behind Isaiah's seat. Rainwater had formed a small dark crescent there. Beside it, barely visible under the edge of the seat, was a pharmacy receipt Isaiah had picked up with the bottles and missed when returning the bag. Charlotte leaned forward and saw the name printed on the top. Not the old man's. Caleb Brooks. Same clinic. Same date as the court receipt. Grant opened her door. "Charlotte, we need to move." She took the receipt before the wind could steal it, folded it once, and slipped it into her folder without understanding why. Across the car, Isaiah helped the old doorman steady a heavy brass barrier that another staff member had abandoned in the rain. No cameras were pointed at him now. No board member could see. Charlotte did. And for the first time that morning, she did not step out when ordered. She sat there, holding a receipt that made Grant's file feel suddenly incomplete. Charlotte Whitmore did not enter the boardroom right away. She stood in the private elevator long after the doors had opened, listening to the faint chime repeat as if the building itself was losing patience with her. Outside, the executive floor stretched in glass, steel, and polished stone. Everything reflected her back perfectly. Her coat. Her shoes. Her face arranged into control. Nothing reflected what had happened in the back of that car when a man with wet sleeves stopped the morning for a stranger's medicine and never once looked to see if she approved. Her phone lit again. Board counsel. Grant. 2 missed calls from her mother. One message from an unknown family trustee: "Your father built this company for blood, not sentiment." Charlotte turned the screen face down on the table in her office. The room fell into a silence so expensive it almost felt artificial. 48 floors above the street, the city looked obedient. Tiny cars. Tiny people. Tiny weather. She placed the pharmacy receipt beside the inheritance folder. Caleb Brooks. Same clinic. Same date. It should have been data. It should have gone into a risk column. Dependent child. Medical cost. Financial vulnerability. Leverage. That was how Grant had taught her to survive the last 6 years. Reduce every unknown person to what they might take. Every kindness to a strategy. Every hand extended to a bill that had not arrived yet. She opened the security feed on her desk monitor. The image showed the curb outside Whitmore Holdings. Isaiah lifting the brass barrier with the old doorman. The doorman laughing at something Isaiah said. No cameras. No audience. No gain. Then another clip. The bus stop. The medicine bottles. Isaiah kneeling in rainwater while executives waited in leather seats. Charlotte paused on the frame where his thumb pressed the loose black tape back onto Caleb's lunchbox. It was ridiculous, how long she looked at that small repair. Her father had hated patched things. If something cracked, he replaced it. If a person disappointed him, he replaced them faster. Charlotte could still hear his voice from the last hospital room, thin but sharp beneath the machines. Trust is what people ask for when they do not have collateral. She had believed him because believing him had made grief easier to organize. A knock came once before Grant entered. He never waited for permission when he thought urgency made him useful. The board is restless, he said. They heard the driver delayed you. They are asking whether your judgment is being affected. Charlotte closed the camera window, but not before Grant saw the paused image. His eyes narrowed. You're reviewing him again. I'm reviewing the facts. Facts are simple. He has debt, a custody hearing, and a child whose needs make him easy to pressure. Men in that position do not remain principled for long. Charlotte looked at the receipt on her desk, then at Grant. You moved his hearing date into the file before he was notified. Grant smiled without warmth. I have better sources than clerks. It was not an answer. It was almost a confession, but wrapped safely enough to deny. Charlotte felt a cold line form beneath her ribs. She picked up the receipt and slid it into her drawer. Do not contact the court again without my approval. Grant's smile faded. You cannot afford to become sentimental, Charlotte. Her voice stayed even. I can afford to become accurate. Across the city, Isaiah was not thinking about her accuracy. He was at a corner grocery with Caleb after school, counting cash beneath the buzz of fluorescent lights. He put back the name-brand cereal. Caleb pretended not to notice. The plain one is better anyway, the boy said. Isaiah looked at him, tired enough to ache, proud enough to stand straighter. You don't have to make things easier for me. Caleb hugged the lunchbox to his chest. I'm not. I'm making breakfast easier. Isaiah bought the cheaper cereal, 2 bananas, and a roll of black tape to fix the handle again. He still did not know his assignment had been unsuspended. He still did not know Charlotte had kept the receipt. Back in her office, Charlotte opened Isaiah's folder one more time. Not the financial summary. Not the risk profile. The birth certificate. Caleb Isaiah Brooks. Father listed. Mother line blank. At the bottom, stamped beside the hospital seal, was a date Charlotte knew too well. The same date her father had rewritten the Whitmore Inheritance Trust. Her hand stopped over the page. For the first time all day, she did not feel in control of the room. She pressed the intercom. Find out where Mr. Brooks is tonight, she said, then paused. And ask whether Caleb has eaten. Charlotte did not send a driver. She sent Mrs. Vale with a plain black car and instructions that sounded like business if no one listened too closely. Bring Mr. Brooks to the east entrance. Bring the boy if needed. Do not involve Grant. By the time Isaiah and Caleb arrived at Whitmore House, the sky had turned the color of damp steel. Caleb had eaten half a banana on the ride and fallen asleep against his father's arm, the metal lunchbox resting on his lap like a shield. Isaiah carried the grocery bag in one hand and the folder in the other. Caleb carried the lunchbox himself once they stepped out, because some things mattered more when held by the person who loved them. Inside, the east corridor was quieter than the service hall, lined with old portraits of Whitmore men who looked like they had never packed a school lunch in their lives. Charlotte waited near the library doors, her phone glowing in her palm. She looked at Caleb first. That surprised Isaiah. Not enough to trust. Enough to notice. Mrs. Vale said he hadn't had dinner, Charlotte said. Her voice was controlled, almost too controlled. There's food in the small dining room. Isaiah glanced toward the open doorway. Silver-covered dishes. Linen napkins. A table set for people who expected hunger to arrive dressed properly. We're not here to be fed, he said. You asked for documents. Caleb tugged lightly at his sleeve. Dad, I'm okay. But his stomach betrayed him with a small, honest sound. The hallway heard it. Charlotte heard it. Isaiah did too. He looked down at his son, and the sternness in his face softened without becoming surrender. You can eat, he said. But we don't take what we didn't come for without saying thank you. Caleb nodded, serious as a judge. In the small dining room, Caleb sat on the edge of a chair too large for him while a maid placed soup and bread nearby. He did not touch the silver spoon at first. He opened his lunchbox instead and took out the half sandwich from earlier, flattened and wrapped neatly in wax paper. Charlotte stood by the doorway, watching a child choose a dented lunchbox over food that cost more than his father's groceries for a week. You don't have to eat that, she said before she could stop herself. Caleb looked up. I know. Then why? He glanced at Isaiah, then back at her. Because Dad made it before he knew if today would be bad. The room changed. Not loudly. Nothing broke. But Charlotte felt the sentence move through the air and settle somewhere she had spent years keeping locked. Before he knew if today would be bad. Her father had never prepared anything for a bad day except harder rules. Bigger contracts. Cleaner exits. Isaiah stood behind Caleb's chair, one hand resting lightly on the carved wood, not touching his son, only present enough for the boy to feel anchored. He did not explain the sandwich. He did not turn Caleb's words into a lesson. He simply unfolded a napkin and placed it within reach. Charlotte's phone buzzed. Grant. Then again. Board counsel requests confirmation. Then again. Do not let him create a personal hold. She turned the screen down. Caleb noticed the motion. Children noticed what adults thought they hid. He studied Charlotte's face for a moment, then reached into the lunchbox and pulled out the folded note from that morning. You can have this, he said. Isaiah's eyes shifted. Caleb. It's okay, Caleb said. She looks like she forgets too. Charlotte did not move. The note rested in Caleb's small hand, blue pencil creases softened from being carried all day. Dad, don't forget to eat too. You get quiet when you're hungry. Her throat tightened, but her face stayed still. She took it carefully, as if paper could accuse. Thank you, she said, and the word sounded and used in that room. Isaiah watched her, not suspicious exactly, but protective of the line between kindness and pity. He gives things when he thinks someone needs them, Isaiah said. Doesn't mean he owes anyone anything. Charlotte looked at him. There it was again. A boundary without insult. A warning wrapped in fatherhood. I wasn't going to take from him, she said. People rarely call it taking when a child offers first. The sentence was quiet. It struck harder because it did not aim to. In the silence after, Caleb dipped his bread into the soup and finally ate. Charlotte looked at the note in her hand, then at the birth certificate in the folder on the sideboard. The date still troubled her. The hospital seal. The blank mother line. A small thread between her father's last trust amendment and this child's first day in the world. She wanted to ask. She did not. Not yet. Instead, she said, "Caleb, do you know where you were born?" Isaiah's hand tightened once on the chair. Caleb answered with the simple confidence of a child repeating a family fact. "St. Agnes. Dad says I arrived during a storm." Charlotte's breath stopped so briefly only Isaiah saw it. St. Agnes had been the hospital where her father disappeared for 3 days before changing the Whitmore Trust. Before Grant became indispensable. Before Charlotte learned that family secrets could be notarized. From the hallway, a security camera blinked red. At the far end, Grant stood half-hidden behind the glass door, phone raised just enough to capture Charlotte holding a child's note like it mattered. His message arrived on her screen a second later. "Careful. The board will not like seeing him at your table." By morning, the photograph had already learned to lie. It moved through Whitmore Holdings first as a message, then as a whisper, then as a headline waiting for permission. Charlotte Whitmore seated at a private dining table with a temporary driver and his son. Charlotte holding the boy's note. Isaiah Brooks standing too close to her chair. Caleb's lunchbox open on polished wood as if it belonged there. The image had no sound. No soup steam. No tired child. No father's hand resting on the back of a chair to remind his son he was safe. Just a frame sharpened until kindness looked like strategy. Grant did not send it to the press. Not yet. He was too careful for that. He sent it to 3 board members with the subject line, "Boundary Concern." By 9, the executive floor had gone colder than usual. Assistants lowered their voices when Isaiah stepped out of the elevator with Caleb's legal folder under his arm. A security guard who had nodded to him yesterday now looked past him. Mrs. Vale stood near the reception desk, worried eyes down, hands clasped tight enough to pale the knuckles. Caleb was not with him this time. That made the silence worse. Isaiah had dropped his son at school and watched him walk through the front gate holding the repaired lunchbox like nothing in the world could embarrass him if his father had fixed it. Then another parent had recognized the picture from someone's phone. The woman had not said anything cruel. She had only looked at Caleb longer than necessary. Children noticed length. Isaiah noticed it too. Now, in the glass conference anteroom, Grant placed a tablet on the table and turned it toward Charlotte. "This is the risk becoming visible," he said. The image filled the screen. Charlotte's face did not change, but her fingers stopped moving over the pen. "Who took this?" "Security corridor capture." "That angle is not from the corridor." Grant's smile was almost patient. "The board will not care about the angle. They will care that a vulnerable employee, with an active custody issue and financial pressure, is being invited into your private dining rooms with a minor child. It creates exposure." Isaiah stood at the far end of the room, not seated, not asked to sit. The tablet glow caught the rain-dark lines in his jacket. He looked at the image once. Only once. His eyes stopped on Caleb's lunchbox. The little metal box sat open beside a silver soup spoon, made to look like evidence instead of a child's comfort. Something in his chest tightened, but his face stayed calm. "My son doesn't belong in your board politics," he said. Grant looked satisfied, as if any sentence from Isaiah could be filed under instability. "Then perhaps you should have kept him out of this house." Isaiah turned to him slowly. "He came because your message came before school." The room went still. Charlotte looked at Grant. Not sharply. Not enough for the board liaison standing near the door to call it confrontation. But enough for Grant to feel it. He adjusted his cuff. Operational urgency required flexibility. "Flexibility for you," Isaiah said. "Exposure for him." No one answered. Outside the glass, 2 junior executives pretended not to watch. One of them whispered something. The other glanced at Isaiah's boots. Class had a language even when it wore expensive perfume and said nothing at all. Charlotte picked up the pen, then put it down again. The decision on the table was simple: suspend Isaiah from all Whitmore properties until the board meeting concluded. Clean. Efficient. Cruel enough to be called prudent. If she signed, Grant would be pleased. The board would relax. The story would shrink around Isaiah and Caleb until it became their problem alone. Her phone buzzed. Grant's message appeared even though he stood 10 feet away. Sign now. Do not make this emotional. Charlotte turned the phone face down. I want the full footage, she said. Grant's expression tightened. We have the relevant portion. Relevant to whom? Her voice stayed low, but something in it made the board liaison look up. Grant stepped closer. Charlotte, hesitation will be read as attachment. Isaiah watched her then. Not hopeful. Hope was too expensive to spend in rooms like this. He watched because Caleb's name was in that folder, and the next move could reach all the way to a school hallway, a custody bench, a boy pretending plain cereal tasted better. Mr. Brooks, Charlotte said without looking away from Grant, did you bring your son here for sympathy? Isaiah's answer came after one quiet breath. No, ma'am. I brought him because I don't leave him alone for someone else's convenience. The pen in Charlotte's hand stilled again. Not innocence. Not guilt. Something harder to categorize. A man refusing to apologize for fatherhood. Grant exhaled through his nose. This is exactly the kind of emotional framing that makes him dangerous. Isaiah looked at the tablet, at the frozen image of Caleb's lunchbox, and made a choice that cost him before anyone named the price. If the picture hurts him, he said, tell them I asked to leave. Don't put my son in the reason. Mrs. Vale made a small sound by the door. Charlotte heard it. She also saw the security supervisor behind Grant slide a small drive from the console into his jacket pocket. Too quick. Too practiced. Her eyes followed the movement, then returned to the tablet. The lunchbox in the image was open, but the note Caleb had handed her was missing from the frame. Someone had chosen what not to show. Charlotte signed nothing. Instead, she closed the suspension file and said, no one deletes anything. Grant's smile vanished. Across town, at Caleb's school, a teacher opened his backpack for the lunch count and found the metal lunchbox gone. In its place was a printed copy of the photograph, folded once, with 4 words written across the bottom in black ink, your father used you. Isaiah found out about the photograph at 2:14 in the afternoon, not from Whitmore Holdings, not from Grant, not from any adult with the courage to speak plainly, but from Caleb's school. The principal's office smelled like disinfectant, pencil shavings, and old carpet warmed by fluorescent lights. Caleb sat in a plastic chair beside the desk, his backpack on his knees, both hands empty. That was what Isaiah noticed first. No lunchbox. His son's fingers kept closing around air where the handle should have been. On the desk lay the printed photograph, folded hard down the center, the black ink words cutting across the bottom like something meant to leave a mark. Your father used you. Isaiah read it once. His face stayed still. Caleb watched him with wide eyes, waiting to see whether the world had finally found the place where his father would break. Isaiah only lowered himself into the chair beside him and placed one hand over Caleb's hands. Look at me, buddy. Caleb did. Did I use you? The boy shook his head fast, but tears had already gathered. I know you didn't. Then we start there. The principal cleared his throat, uncomfortable in the way good people became when rules failed to protect anyone. Mr. Brooks, we're reviewing hallway cameras. Another parent found the paper near his cubby. Until we understand how this entered the school, perhaps it would be better if Caleb stayed home tomorrow. Stayed home. As if rent paused for humiliation. As if custody courts admired absence. As if a child could be hidden from cruelty by missing math class. Isaiah nodded once, not in agreement, but to show he had heard. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Whitmore Dispatch. Then again. Agency supervisor. Then a third time. Unknown. He did not answer. Caleb's breathing hitched. Dad, can we go get my lunchbox? The principal looked down. Security took it as part of the review. It was found open near the side entrance. Isaiah felt something old and hot rise in his chest. Not anger first. Protection. The kind that made men foolish if they let it drive. He stood slowly. That box is my son's property. I understand, but procedure can hold the paper, Isaiah said. His voice remained low. Not his lunch. The principal blinked. Caleb looked at the floor. Isaiah saw the shame trying to crawl into his boy's shoulders and made his choice before anyone could turn it into strategy. He took the printed photograph, folded it neatly, and slid it into his own jacket pocket. Put my name on the complaint, he said. Leave Caleb's out. Mr. Brooks, that may affect your custody documentation if this escalates. Then let it affect me. The words were simple. They cost him more than anyone in that room understood. Outside, in the parking lot, rain had begun again. Thin, cold, steady. Isaiah walked Caleb to the old bus shelter across the street because his suspended assignment meant no car, no pay, and no guarantee the agency would call tomorrow. Caleb carried only his backpack now. It looked too light. I'm sorry, the boy whispered. Isaiah stopped. A city bus roared past, spraying water across the curb. He turned and knelt in front of his son, not caring who saw him on the wet pavement. You never apologize for somebody else's small heart. Caleb swallowed. But you're going to lose work. Isaiah brushed a raindrop from Caleb's cheek with his thumb. Work can be found. You only get one name. We keep yours clean. At Whitmore Holdings, Charlotte saw the cost later, not in a report, but in fragments that refused to behave like data. A missed dispatch log. A cancelled shift. A note from the school forwarded by mistake to Grant's office. A still image from the school hallway showing Caleb standing beside an open cubby, looking at the place where his lunchbox should have been. She watched the clip twice. Then a third time. The boy did not cry on camera. Somehow that made it worse. Grant entered with a suspension form and a face prepared for efficiency. The school incident confirms the situation is spreading, he said. We should cut contact now. Offer a small settlement. Quietly. Charlotte stared at the word settlement. She thought of the soup untouched until the child felt permitted. The note in blue pencil. Isaiah's hand closing the lunchbox before her curiosity could trespass. Where is the lunchbox? She asked. Grant paused. Excuse me. Caleb's lunchbox. The school says it was taken as part of the review. Grant's expression flickered. Not much. Enough. I assume security has it. Charlotte stood. Then get it back. Charlotte, you cannot possibly be making decisions around a damaged piece of metal. She looked at him then, really looked, and the room seemed to lose a degree of warmth. No, she said. I'm making one around a child who lost the only thing in that photo that was actually his. Grant's mouth tightened, but he left. Minutes later, Charlotte found Isaiah in the underground parking level, not waiting for her, not asking for anything, just helping Mrs. Vale load donated pantry boxes into her car because one of the elevators had gone down and no one else wanted to carry them in the rain. His phone sat on the concrete ledge beside him, screen cracked, showing 3 missed calls from the agency and 1 reminder, Caleb Court Shoes, Friday. Beside the phone lay the folded photograph from the school, damp at the edges. Charlotte held out an envelope before she knew how insulting it would look. This should cover the missed shift. Isaiah glanced at it, then went back to lifting the box into Mrs. Vale's trunk. I don't charge people for doing damage they didn't mean to notice. Charlotte lowered the envelope. Quietly. For the first time, respect hurt more than guilt. Behind them, the service elevator opened. Grant stepped out holding Caleb's metal lunchbox by 2 fingers, sealed inside a clear evidence bag. Charlotte did not sleep that night. She stayed in her office after the building emptied, with the lights dimmed low enough for the city to appear on the glass like another room she could not enter. On her desk sat 3 things that did not belong together: Caleb's lunchbox and its clear evidence bag, Isaiah's custody file, and the old Whitmore Trust amendment dated 7 years ago. The lunchbox looked smaller under executive lighting. More fragile. More stubborn. Black tape around the handle. 1 dent near the latch. A smear of blue pencil on the inside lid where Caleb must have pressed a note too hard. Charlotte turned on the scanner and fed in the first page of Isaiah's folder. The machine hummed. Paper slid beneath green light. Facts appeared where feelings had been trying to get in. St. Agnes Hospital. Caleb Isaiah Brooks. Born during a citywide storm alert. Father present. Mother undisclosed. No family claim filed. Charlotte opened her father's trust amendment. Same date. Same hospital notary stamp. Same emergency witness line. Her breath went quiet. She read it again because rich families trained their daughters to distrust coincidence. The witness name had been blurred in the scan, but the first initials remained. I.B. Her phone vibrated. Grant. She let it ring. Then Mrs. Vale knocked, holding a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. You asked if anyone remembered St. Agnes, she said. Charlotte looked up. Mrs. Vale's face carried the nervous loyalty of a woman who had seen too many powerful people punish memory. Your father went there that week, Mrs. Vale said. I was told not to put it on the family calendar. Mr. Ellison handled it. Charlotte glanced at the lunchbox. Did you ever hear the name Brooks? Mrs. Vale hesitated 1 beat too long. Before she could answer, the office door opened. Grant stepped in without knocking. His eyes moved from the trust file to Mrs. Vale, then to the evidence bag on the desk. This is becoming inappropriate, he said. Charlotte did not move. What happened at St. Agnes? Grant's smile appeared carefully. Your father was dying. Many things happened. That is not an answer. It is the only answer that still protects you. Mrs. Vale lowered her eyes. Charlotte saw fear there. Not of scandal. Of Grant. Across town, Isaiah sat at his kitchen table with Caleb's school shoes in front of him, polishing scuffed black leather with an old rag and the last of a cheap tin of wax. Caleb slept on the couch, 1 sock on, 1 sock missing, a library book open over his chest. The apartment smelled of coffee, rain, and tired heat from the radiator. Isaiah's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Then Charlotte's name appeared after a short pause, like someone had decided not to hide behind systems anymore. He answered but did not speak first. Mr. Brooks, Charlotte said. Her voice was quieter than he expected. Were you at St. Agnes Hospital the night Caleb was born? Isaiah's hand stopped over the shoe. The old rag hung between his fingers. For a moment, only the refrigerator answered. Then Caleb shifted in his sleep and whispered, Dad. Isaiah covered the phone with his palm and looked at his son. I'm here. He returned to the call. That night belongs to my son, he said. Not your board. Charlotte closed her eyes. The sentence did not deny anything. That frightened her more than denial would have. My father signed something there, she said. Your initials may be on it. Isaiah looked at the folded court reminder on the table. Caleb's hearing. Morning. A judge who would care about employment, stability, records. Not mysteries and billionaire files. Miss Whitmore, he said, Careful with every word, I have spent 7 years keeping my child out of rooms where people trade truth for advantage. I won't open that door just because you finally found the handle. The line went silent. Charlotte did not feel insulted. She felt seen in a way that made her want to look away. Grant reached across her desk and picked up the trust amendment. Enough, he said. You are feeding a fantasy. Charlotte caught his wrist before he could close the folder. It surprised both of them. On the exposed page, beneath the emergency witness line, the scanner had sharpened what the old copy had hidden. Not a full signature. Not proof. Only a fragment of handwriting, firm and slanted, beside the initials I.B. Isaiah Brooks. Charlotte stared at it. Grant stared at her staring. Then her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown sender and one attached video file labeled, St. Agnes, East Hall, 2:43 a.m. Before Charlotte could open it, the office lights flickered once, the security system chimed, and every monitor in the room went black. The blackout lasted 12 seconds. Long enough for Grant to move. Long enough for fear to choose a costume and call itself caution. When the monitors came back, the St. Agnes file was gone from Charlotte's screen, replaced by a system error and a blinking cursor that offered no mercy. Grant stood near the console with his hand at his side, face pale but composed, as if nothing in the room had shifted. Charlotte turned toward him slowly. Where is it? Where is what? His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that made panic look foolish if you named it first. Before Charlotte could answer, the board liaison rushed in with 2 security officers and a printed report still warm from the machine. Unauthorized file access. External contact with a restricted trust archive. Potential evidence tampering connected to Isaiah Brooks. The words lined up cleanly on white paper. Clean enough to destroy a man. Charlotte read them once and felt the room close around her. That is not possible, she said, but her voice did not land with authority. It landed with doubt. Grant took the report gently, like a man accepting a burden he had arranged. He had reason to interfere. Custody pressure. Financial leverage. Access through your personal line. Charlotte, this is what I warned you about. Her phone buzzed. A message from court counsel. Caleb's custody review had received an anonymous concern regarding instability and exposure to public scandal. Charlotte's grip tightened around the phone. Across town, Isaiah was already at the courthouse steps with Caleb, holding a folder in one hand and his son's small shoulder in the other. Caleb wore the polished black shoes, still scuffed at the toes but shining where Isaiah's tired hands had worked late into the night. The boy's lunchbox was not with him. His hand kept drifting to where it should have been. A clerk came out before their appointment time and called Isaiah aside. Her expression carried the practiced sadness of someone delivering bad news from behind procedure. The review was postponed. Employment verification unresolved. School incident added to file. Further documentation required. Isaiah listened without interruption. Caleb looked up at him, trying to read the verdict in the stillness of his father's jaw. Are we in trouble? The boy whispered. Isaiah crouched on the courthouse step, rain misting over both of them. We're delayed, he said. Trouble is when you stop showing up. But something in his eyes changed when his phone rang and Charlotte's name appeared. He answered. Her voice came through tight, controlled, almost unfamiliar. Did you contact anyone about St. Agnes after our call? Isaiah looked at Caleb. At the folder. At the courthouse doors closing without them. No, did you access any Whitmore Trust archive? No, a pause. Behind her silence, he heard other people breathing. Board people. Legal people. Grant. Mr. Brooks, she said, and the formality hurt more than accusation. Until this is clarified, I need you to stay away from Whitmore House, Whitmore Holdings, and all related staff. Caleb watched his father's face. Isaiah closed his eyes once. Not from weakness. From the discipline of not letting pain become sound. You're suspending me. I'm protecting the process. No, ma'am, he said quietly. You're protecting the room. The line went silent. No one in Charlotte's office moved. Isaiah did not raise his voice. He did not explain the hearing on the courthouse steps. He did not tell her Caleb had worn his best shoes for a judge who would not see him. He did not ask whether her caution had cost his son another month of being judged by strangers. He only said, I hope it gives you what you need. Then he ended the call. Charlotte stood with the phone still at her ear, listening to the dead line as if dignity might echo. Grant exhaled softly. That was wise. She looked at him, and for the first time, his approval felt like a stain. In the courthouse rain, Caleb tugged at Isaiah's sleeve. Do we still get my lunchbox back? Isaiah looked toward the street, where buses sighed against the curb and people moved around them without knowing anything had broken. He put the folder under his arm and took Caleb's hand. We'll get what's ours, he said. But not today. At Whitmore House that evening, Mrs. Vale found the metal lunchbox on Charlotte's desk, still sealed inside the clear evidence bag Grant had left behind. Charlotte stared at it under the green banker's lamp. The dent. The taped handle. The small smear of blue pencil inside the lid. She reached for it, then stopped, because touching it felt like touching the consequence before she was ready to name it. Her computer chimed. One recovered file had returned from the security cache. Not the St. Agnes video. Only its thumbnail. A grainy hallway frame. A younger Isaiah, 7 years ago, holding a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket. Beside him stood Charlotte's father, alive, frightened, and handing him the same metal lunchbox. Charlotte watched the recovered thumbnail until the shape of it stopped being an image and became a verdict. Her father. Isaiah. A newborn. The metal lunchbox. One frame from 7 years ago, small and grainy, but strong enough to make every polished lie in the room tremble. She did not call Grant first. That would have been the old Charlotte, asking the architect of the cage where the door was. She called the hospital archive. Then the retired night nurse listed in an old St. Agnes staffing sheet. Then Mrs. Vale, who stood beside her desk with both hands clasped while the recovered cache rebuilt itself line by line. By noon, the boardroom at Whitmore Holdings was full. Directors in dark suits. Legal counsel. Security. Grant at the far end, expression sealed into professional concern. Isaiah stood near the door with Caleb beside him because Charlotte had asked them to come, and because Isaiah had decided his son deserved to see a room tell the truth if a room had helped carry a lie. Caleb's metal lunchbox sat on the conference table, no longer in an evidence bag. The black tape around the handle had been smoothed down. Charlotte had done that herself with careful fingers before anyone arrived. Caleb looked at it, then at his father. Isaiah rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. Not to steady him. To tell him he was not alone. Charlotte stood at the head of the table, the city burning white behind the glass. Her voice did not shake, but it moved slower than usual, as if every word had to cross a place in her that still hurt. Yesterday, I made a decision based on incomplete evidence, she said. Grant shifted. Charlotte, this is not the appropriate forum. It is the exact forum, she said. The room went still. She tapped the screen. The recovered St. Agnes footage appeared on the wall. Blue hallway light. Rain against hospital windows. A younger Isaiah sitting on a bench with a newborn wrapped against his chest, exhausted and alert in the way new fathers looked when love arrived before sleep. Charlotte's father entered the frame, thinner than she remembered, carrying the same metal lunchbox. He sat beside Isaiah. There was no audio at first. Then the archive sound came through, rough but clear. Her father's voice, fragile and frightened. If anything happens to me, keep this away from Grant. He'll turn the trust into a weapon. Isaiah's younger voice answered, low and steady. I'm not part of your family war, Mr. Whitmore. I've got a child in my arms. That's why I'm asking you, her father said. You know what matters. The boardroom did not breathe. Charlotte did not look at Grant. Not yet. The footage continued. Her father placed a sealed envelope inside the lunchbox and pushed it toward Isaiah. Witness this. Nothing more. If Charlotte ever needs proof, she'll find the date. Isaiah did not take it immediately. Even then, even younger, even poor, he had hesitated before touching a rich man's secret. I won't be bought, he said on the video. Her father almost smiled. I know. Charlotte closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, Grant was already standing. That footage is inadmissible without chain of custody. Then let's discuss custody, Charlotte said. She opened another file. Security logs. Edited footage. School photograph distribution. Anonymous court concern. Grant's assistant's metadata. The missing seconds from the blackout. Not enough for revenge. Enough for truth. Enough to stop the machine. Grant's face lost color by degrees. You're making a mistake. Charlotte looked at him then. No. I made it yesterday. She turned to the board. Isaiah Brooks did not access our archives. He did not manipulate our trust. He did not use his child to gain favor. He protected a document my father placed in his care, then refused to use that protection as leverage even when I gave him every reason to. Her gaze moved to Isaiah. This was the hard part. Not because apology was impossible, but because apology without cost was just another luxury. I suspended him in front of people who were already prepared to doubt him. I allowed his son's name to be dragged into a room where it never belonged. Effective immediately, the suspension is withdrawn. The school complaint will be corrected by Whitmore Legal today, with my name on the statement. The board will receive the full footage, not a convenient frame. And Grant Ellison is removed from all Whitmore Trust Authority pending external review. Grant's chair scraped the floor. No one followed him when security approached. No one spoke his name. Isaiah did not smile. He did not look victorious. He only watched Caleb, whose eyes had fixed on the lunchbox as if it had returned from somewhere dangerous. Charlotte picked it up with both hands and walked the length of the table. Each step sounded too loud. When she reached them, she lowered herself just enough to meet Caleb's eyes and held out the box. This should never have been taken from you. Caleb accepted it carefully. Did my dad do something wrong? The question found every adult in the room and made them smaller. Charlotte looked at Isaiah before answering. No, she said. Your dad kept standing when the rest of us sat behind excuses. Caleb looked up at Isaiah. Isaiah's face stayed calm, but his hand settled more firmly on his son's shoulder. Charlotte rose. Mr. Brooks, she said, quieter now, no boardroom voice left in her. I can correct the record. I can restore the job. I can face what I allowed. But I know that does not make trust automatic. Isaiah held her gaze. The room waited for forgiveness as if it were another signature. He did not give it to them. Truth came late, he said. Late still matters. But my son and I need time to see what it changes. Charlotte nodded once. The courage it had taken to speak did not protect her from the pain of waiting. Caleb hugged the lunchbox to his chest, then asked softly, Dad, do we still have to leave? Isaiah looked at Charlotte, then at the door, then back at his boy. And for the first time all day, he did not answer right away. The next morning did not arrive like a miracle. It arrived with the same old refrigerator hum, the same bus brake sighing at the corner, the same narrow kitchen light falling across unpaid envelopes Isaiah had not thrown away simply because truth had finally learned his name. Caleb sat at the table with his shoes on and his lunchbox open in front of him. The dent was still there. The black tape was still uneven. But the box no longer looked like something rescued from evidence. It looked like itself again. Isaiah packed the sandwich carefully, wrapped it in wax paper, and added a banana because Mrs. Vale had sent groceries without a card and Charlotte had not insulted him by pretending it was charity. She had written only one sentence on the delivery slip, for Caleb, if allowed. Isaiah had stared at those 3 words for a long time before putting the bananas on the counter. If allowed. That was new. Power asking permission. Caleb watched him close the lunchbox. Are you mad at Miss Charlotte? Isaiah wiped a crumb from the table with his thumb. No, are you happy with her? He almost smiled. Those aren't the only 2 choices. Caleb thought about that, then nodded like he had been given a hard but fair homework problem. At school, no one had removed the whispers completely, but the principal met them at the front door himself. He spoke to Caleb first. Not over him. Not around him. To him. He returned the written correction from Whitmore Legal, signed by Charlotte, admitting the photograph had been misused and the complaint withdrawn. Isaiah folded the paper once and placed it in Caleb's backpack, not as a trophy, but as a shield his son should never have needed. When they came out, Charlotte was waiting across the street beside a plain black car. No driver standing with an umbrella. No assistant. No Grant. Just her, a cream coat buttoned against the cool morning, hands empty for once. She did not cross until Isaiah saw her. She had learned that much. Caleb lifted one hand in a small wave. Charlotte returned it, smaller still, like she was afraid of taking too much space in the boys' morning. Isaiah walked him to the school gate. Caleb paused, turned back, and held up the lunchbox. Dad, don't forget to eat too. The same words. But they landed differently now. Not as fear. As routine returning. Isaiah nodded. I won't. When Caleb disappeared inside, the street grew quiet between them. Rain from the night before clung to the curb in silver patches. Charlotte looked at the school doors, then at Isaiah. I came to return something, she said. She held out a folded page. Not money. Not a contract. A copy of the old St. Agnes witness statement, sealed in a protective sleeve. Isaiah did not take it at first. That belongs in your family file. It belonged in the truth, she said. You carried it longer than you should have had to. He accepted it with 2 fingers, careful, as if the paper had weight beyond the page. Your father was scared that night. Charlotte looked down. So was I, years later. I just called it control. No dramatic apology followed. No polished speech. She let the sentence stand in the cold air and did not ask it to save her. Isaiah respected that more than he expected to. A bus pulled up to the corner. People stepped on. People stepped off. Life kept its schedule even when hearts were late. Charlotte glanced at the bus, then back at him. The board wants to reinstate you formally. Better terms. Full benefits. No surveillance. No favors hidden in the fine print. Isaiah studied her face. And the other position? She knew what he meant. The 6 months. The paper marriage. The offer that had begun like an exit disguised as a door. Her fingers tightened once around the strap of her purse. Then loosened. I withdrew it. Isaiah's eyes stayed steady. Why? Because I don't want to buy the kind of man who taught me I shouldn't. The answer did not make everything easy. It made it honest. That was harder. Isaiah looked toward the school, where Caleb's classroom window had begun to glow with morning activity. Small shapes moving. Children laughing behind glass. I still need work, he said. Not rescue. Charlotte nodded. Then work is what I'm offering. Respect is what I owe. Anything else has to be earned without a contract. He held her gaze long enough for the silence to become a bridge, but not a promise. That's a better place to start. A faint sound came from inside the school. Children reciting something in uneven voices. Charlotte listened. For once, she did not reach for her phone when it buzzed. She let it ring into her pocket until it stopped. Isaiah noticed. He did not praise her for it. Some changes deserved room before applause. He adjusted the old jacket on his shoulders and turned toward the bus stop. Charlotte walked beside him, not too close. At the curb, Caleb's lunchbox was visible through the classroom window, sitting on a small desk beneath a paper rocket taped to the wall. Dented. Repaired. Useful. Loved. Isaiah saw it and smiled just enough for the morning to soften. Charlotte saw him smile and did not try to own the moment. She only stood in it. That was how the story ended for now. Not with a kiss. Not with a mansion becoming home overnight. Not with a rich woman saved or a poor man rewarded like a prize. It ended with a father keeping his son's morning steady, a woman learning to ask instead of command, and an old lunchbox sitting where it belonged. He never raised his voice. He raised her faith in people.